EA is such a hilarious company, right? Because at one point in time, they were the big dogs, okay? They would put something out there. Yeah, it might have some nefarious practices that they were just doing in general. Remember, they originated the online pass back in the Xbox 360, PS3 days. They were the ones that kicked off all of the loot box stuff, really culminating with, what was that, Battlefront 2, Star Wars Battlefront 2, that is. But honestly, they've kind of faded out of public perception. And as it is actively illustrated here, Mass Effect hasn't released anything of value since 2012 other than Mass Effect Legendary Edition. God, nothing of value since 2012? I mean, I really have to examine that. Like, things that immediately come to mind, like Battlefield 1 was really good and it was very successful. 5 eventually came around, but it was ooh boy, that was a catastrophic beginning. But really innovating and creating something new, you might have it with that. But yes, what they did was ruined at least 5 franchises and a new IP. Mass Effect Andromeda, that is my most hated game of all time. I despise that game for as much as I talk shit on Final Fantasy 16. I think that it's an abhorrent pile of garbage. Andromeda, I've said it before and I'll keep it brief. That kept me out of gaming for 3 years, okay, when it released in 2017. Like, I got to the jungle planet with a lispy cat alien. It's like, yeah, I'm done. I'm not just done with the game. I'm just done in general. Korean DLC canceled. Mirror's Edge Catalyst tanked. Anthem failed miserably and shut down. Battlefield 2042 failed. Dead Space, yes, 2 remake canceled. After the Dead Space remake, I heard really good things about, just underperformed. And then, yes, of course, the Dragon Age of the Veilguard is a disgrace. Realistically, you kind of read that and it's more like, kind of BioWare is the studio that seems to be leading the charge on shitting the bed for EA, which is why they're the ones spurging out the hardest in regards to the new Saudi buyout from earlier in the week. EA employees are reportedly panicking over the Saudi-backed takeover. It's gonna get worse. Yes, guns and football is in and all of the gay stuff is out. And it's like, okay, cool. You already had me with the buyout. You don't have to sell it even harder. But Electronic Arts is one of the most recognizable names in gaming. Yeah, they're one of the most storied studios as well. Like them and Ubisoft, who is, funnily enough, going through a similar gutting and restructuring, have their origins backed and based all the way in the Atari 2600 days. So yeah, they are old school. But right now, many EA employees aren't celebrating. Instead, reports suggest that workers inside EA are anxious and upset following the company's massive sale to the Saudi-backed consortium. The $55 billion deal, first reported earlier in the week, will take EA private under a group led by the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, Habibi, along with Silver Lake and Affinity Partners. EA will reportedly carry $20 billion in debt, financing as part of the transaction. Put a pin in that. We will come back around to that later. Analysts are split, with some see potential growth opportunities, while others call the move risky and serving. And yeah, I've heard a lot of people talk about this, and honestly, I think it's an overall good thing, but in reality, we're probably going to lead to a lot more monetization, a lot more normalization of gotcha mechanics, and a lot of safe decisions, a bunch of remakes, remastered, and iterative developments. That's kind of what I'm seeing. A whole bunch of sports games with all of your, ultimate team features, and then also seeing that carry over to any other potential franchise that could pick up steam along the way. But financial experts are far from united on the buyout. Mike Hickey, a benchmark, told the Associated Press that the deal looks self-serving, opportunistic move by management and the investor group. By contrast, Freedom Capital's and Nick McKay offered a more optimistic view, claiming the move will allow EA to increase its focus on long-term growth, without Wall Street breathing down its neck. Yeah, exactly, because this move, it takes the public company private, and to be honest, it's not like they were doing bad on the stock market either. They were one of the more profitable big game studios, so I guess that makes them a ripe acquisition target, but not exactly. Like I said, back when this was first announced, it caught me off guard because there was none of the they really showed none of the hallmarks of being a target for acquisition. But EA CEO Andrew Wilson, who is expected to stay on following the deal, struck an upbeat tone and a note to employees. He told staff, "This moment is a recognition of your creativity, innovation, and passion. Everything we have achieved and everything that lies ahead is because of you. Our values and our commitment to players and fans around the world remains unchanged." But yes, not everyone was convinced. Workers speak out. It's gonna get worse. Game files spoke to several current EA employees who painted a very different picture. One worker didn't hold back. Andrew Wilson basically said F you to all women and gay employees that EA with this deal. This was, of course, a remark on Saudi Arabia's well-worn path, okay, from the stairs to the rooftop. If you know, you know, and if you don't, well, just look up and wonder no longer what the netting is for. But in another Spurgout, it just shows you how many people have been collateral this past year for executives to make out rich. Nothing feels great. We know when the deal closes, it's going to get worse before it gets better, if better is even possible. Like we said at the beginning, it's like it's been dark times for EA, and picture notwithstanding. They haven't really been that creative in regards to their sports games. And when it comes to branching out for anything resembling an actual video game, it has been slop session after slop session. And a lot of that, well, it kind of comes out of BioWare. And like I said, we'll eventually come back around to that $20 billion of debt that they're going to have to carry after this goes through. And well, who could end up bearing most of that burden? Well, probably the people screaming about the shit the most. That would be people over at BioWare. As former BioWare producer suggests EA could sell studio and its IPs to beat the $20 billion debt. Because, yeah, okay, there's still value. There's still value in a lot of those BioWare IPs because, Christ, man. Talking recently about, Ubisoft, Halo, and now about BioWare with, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Jade Empire, Knights of the Old Republic. I know I'm missing a bunch as well, but these used to be studios. These used to be developers that made great fucking games. Now, they haven't in about a decade and change, but if anybody could crack this formula, if given the opportunity to somebody who's far more capable, far more passionate about these IPs, I mean, there's money to be made out there. Just so sad, like, you take a look at all the opportunity cost that has gone out the window. It's like, when did Mass Effect 3 come out? It's been that long since we've had a decent Mass Effect game, but I digress. Recently, the news broke that, yes, EA was being acquired by the Saudis, but EA is going to be retaining the $20 billion in debt financing. And so, how are we going to maneuver that? In a recent video, a former BioWare producer spoke up about the deal, suggesting that EA has a vast portfolio of dormant IPs that could potentially be sold to recoup against a staggering debt. So in the new video, Mark Dara, a former producer and veteran of BioWare, who also was a consultant on the Veilguard, by the way, spoke about the EA deal, suggesting that a few $1 million could be made by selling off studios and IPs under the EA umbrella. EA has a huge repository of dormant IPs that are just sitting there. They're just sitting over there collecting dust. It seems unlikely that a new resulting structure will be eager to suddenly revive a bunch of those IPs. Yeah, of course they can. Well, I would imagine, like, the closest that they'll get, they might remake a couple of things. They might put some new ports out there to see if there's any life in it, and then they could spin it out after they've pumped up the cost. I could see that happening quite a bit. One option might be to sell off a whole lot of them for $100 million to who you could get it from, because $100 million can come off the debt. Exactly. Dara also mentioned that companies like BioWare, where he worked for 24 years, could suffer at the hands of the new owners because they tend to censor or prohibit certain messages and themes in media. Why do you think we talked about the employees Spurgout, such as progressive concepts found in games like Dragon Age, The Veilguard, and Mass Effect Andromeda? I'm, of course, yes, referring to Saudi's PIF, formerly a 10% shareholder in EA, and now the pivotal part of the Buyout consortium. The groups working on the Marvel games and, of course, BioWare are, I think, going to be in a different position. It's hard to imagine that you have BioWare pivot from having very progressive messaging to having a reverse, because it's what the government wants, and that just kind of lets you know that there is more activists than actual developers working in the halls of BioWare. So if they get sold off, they are going to be gutted and their IPs spread to the winds. And honestly, that's about the best you can hope for at this point in time. But it's hard to imagine that the public perception of the game that comes out of BioWare, even if you do that, isn't apocalyptically bad. Perhaps EA Entertainment could be split apart, but EA Sports, it's in the game, is a core moneymaker, and the leadership team will want that to remain stalwart at the heart of the business. Exactly. Because EA has a couple of studios, and depending on how Battlefield 6 does when it releases, God, I think that's next week, huh? That's crazy. But DICE, hey, yeah? Hickory dickory dock. Oh, not that DICE? Damn it. They'll probably have a job working into the future. I don't think that they're going to be too terribly affected by the buyout, but we've seen some sketchy monetization promises for the upcoming Skate title. But yeah, you've also got apparently Mass Effect 5 in the lurch, maybe, potentially. But we speculated on it at the time after, the massive layoffs in the wake of the Veilguard. Is BioWare even going to be making Mass Effect 5? And now, after this buyout, that is looking even less likely. And honestly, that gives me more hope in Mass Effect than I've had in a very, very long time. Might have to get around replaying that and maybe, firing up my copy of the Legacy Edition after all. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.